All right. Welcome back to our History Tuesday. And I had a little snippet of music in the beginning. You can get the idea of the culture and time period that we are in. And this is Northern Europe we're moving into, so a lot of culture in the West has been traced to the Renaissance in Italy in particular. And last week we looked at the Baroque era of Italy, and now we're moving north into something called the Northern Renaissance. And it's mostly hosted in countries like Germany, the Netherlands. They're cold and isolated countries. We're going to see one artist in particular who has really made his way through. Hi Elizabeth, welcome back. And we're going to get started in looking at this first artwork. Oh, but first, how do artists create long-lasting symbols? And you can reverse that question by thinking about what symbols do we have that have really stood the test of time now? It might still be around in the future. Excuse me. Nice. I like that. So the idea and the symbol are kind of standing side by side, and as we grow to think of the idea, we grow to think of the symbol and vice versa. I really appreciate that. So the symbols that stand the test of time are normally the big open ones, right? Our symbols for love, our symbols for happiness, peace, the basic needs in our life are ones that are so easy to understand. Hi Erin, welcome. So we're looking at this piece here today. Maybe you guys have seen it before. Let's have one person take the left side and the other person the right. So the left side is pointing at the hands, and the right side is pointing at the fabric around the cuffs. If you guys can tell me what is happening here. We're seeing some symbolism. Once again, there's never anything wrong in this section. You can't be wrong. You're just trying to figure out what you think the artist is trying to tell you. Clasped hands, yeah. Well-defined shadows. Yeah, it looks like there's some dramatic lighting here. The light's coming from right here, so it's probably either coming from a window or even a candle or a fire. And what's happening on the right side over here? It's subtle, this work, but it's also, there's definitely an in-your-face element as well. Shadows and folded clothes, right? And when we're looking at the clothes themselves too, they don't look like they're fancy silk robes that are gracing the arms at all. They're probably more coarse, a little bit more homespun. Yeah, pretty plain, I agree. Nice. Average. And that definitely matters for this piece. But this piece that has really stood the test of time, we see it all the time today, is in fact just a little study from the artist's work. This was never intended to be a final piece, but just a practice sketch. Moving forward. So what makes you wonder about this piece, now that you know a little bit about it and have guessed some things? Why they made it. Right, that's great. Who made it? So what's interesting is the man who created this piece is not a humble person at all. Yet the artwork is really all about humility and being humble. And that really goes into the culture and the time. Our artist here, his name is Albrecht Dürer. Now technically, this is a German name, and so above the U is something called an umlaut. So that would make it sound like Albrecht Dürer. It kind of sounds like a dwarvish tongue if you like to watch Lord of the Rings. But Albrecht Dürer is probably one of the most famous draftsmen of all time. Have you guys ever heard of him before? Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so he sounds familiar. Why is it just the hands? So this original image actually came from a sketch, originally done with the crayon, well, what they used to call crayon back in the day. It's closer to what we call chalk now, in which Albrecht Dürer was making a study for a giant piece. He wanted to have a saint praying, or a holy figure praying, and he was trying to sketch out the perfect hands. Now, it just so happens that the culture and the time period that he was in, people actually appreciated the simplicity of the hands the most. And thus today, this image is still one of his most famous and sort of unnamed pieces. Like, a lot of people don't realize that he is the person who made this. You can see here from the fine lines of the image, this is from a print. So this is a plate or of a print on which he would be able to make hundreds of these in a really short time. Now, I said print here, and we're in Germany. Can you guys guess what device has just come out in Germany within about 100 years of this? Printing press, right? Specifically the Gutenberg printing press, also from Germany. So the Gutenberg press not only enabled people to write and spread language a lot faster, but for the first time, artists could actually make a killing. Your artists could be very wealthy people. They didn't have to completely rely on patrons to provide for them. Instead, they could make prints of their work. And it's basic economics from here. You can still do this today. If you're interested in selling your own illustrations, I recommend that you do high-resolution scans and get nice prints made of them first and sell those prints instead. Because, say you make a drawing, you sell it for $100. What do you get after, 20 hours worth of work? $100. But if you make a scan and print of that drawing and sell each scan for $20, and maybe 100 people buy it, how much money have you made off of that drawing now? Exactly. All of a sudden, the value of you as an artist can increase, and for the first time, middle-class people, the arriving middle class that was beginning to really grow in Europe, could actually have artwork in their house. Crazy, right? So before then, you couldn't really have artwork in your house unless you paid someone a high amount of money to make it. So walls were pretty barren. But now as the tradesmen and the class is growing, you can actually get these high-resolution prints. You can buy them of these famous artists. So this was a cheap print that he made that is still widely seen today. Erin, can you, sorry, I think I kept talking past when you asked that question. Can you be specific about what I can answer? Oh, you could have real art on your walls. but you couldn't really afford a high level or even a medium level artist until about this point in history. So art was largely preserved for the wealthy class, and now art can become commonplace. And in order to be this is coming out of medieval society into this Baroque era. Couldn't you just make your own? So that's a very different concept culturally. Today, we feel really empowered to make our own work for sure. Back at this point, art was only just beginning to also become a hobby for some people. But remember, the Artists Guild was a guild. In order to create work, you actually had to have training and had to be accepted. You could always practice drawing and stuff on your own, but very few people could afford education in this craft beyond being in a guild. And when you became a member of an art guild, you actually had to have a background in chemistry, for mixing paints, and then also a background in masonry as well if you were a sculptor. So culturally, people were just very different back then. Don't feel stupid at all. That's a great thing to bring up because that's just a very commonplace thing for us now. Like, oh, this wall is barren. Let me just draw a picture and put it up there. Like, we have so much empowerment in our own age, and we have to remember that it's just taken thousands of years for us to get back to this. Now, it didn't used to always be this way. People could still buy crafts. So this is a great time to bring this up. So craft with a lowercase c versus craft with an uppercase c are seen as two different things. And lowercase c craft is what you might think of as arts and crafts in terms of like a camp craft. So maybe you're braiding thread or something together. But uppercase craft comes from the word craftsmanship, and that's like, are you a potter? Are you a builder? Are you doing high-level creations? Maybe it's not in the art side yet, or maybe it is a part of the art, but maybe you're building like designer swing sets or something. That's the uppercase C craft. It's the formal craft, what we call. It means that you have some education in what you're doing behind it. That's a great realization to bring up, and I'm glad you did, because it's hard for us to empathize with people from this time. People are so locked into their role of who they are for their entire life that there's actually punishment in society for stepping out of your role. Creativity was pretty limited. Artists were still copying from one another. So to see people like Albrecht Dürer, you can see how he's starting to actually, by cheapening the art form, by printing it, he's actually about to start being more experimental. So it's rare that someone would just be able to buy a painting like this. They want something more because you're spending a huge amount of money to have an artwork created. So you wouldn't want something this simple. But now that he can print it, people can aesthetically start going for more simpler things. So the culture is changing. I'm really glad that you brought that up because it is so hard for us to empathize with them now. Now, as I said, Albrecht Dürer is not a humble person. You can see this image of him to his left, and this is the standard sort of drawing that he did to his right. Wildly more detailed than the praying hands. A little bit about Albrecht Dürer. We have a lot of accounts of him. As you can see here, he kept his hair long, and he would oil his curls, and he was seen as a very beautiful man of his time. And there's even journal entries from women who lived in his city talking about how handsome and beautiful and well-trimmed and perfumed he was as he walked down the street. He was very full of himself. Also very rich as an emerging artist. He didn't inherit that much money. Most of his money was self-made from creating prints like this. So you can see this image right here. Who does he kind of look like when you look at this image? Yeah, his curls he kept like pristine, combed them every day, had servants to help him. But when you look at this image, like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Is his self-portrait here? Maybe something biblical. Yeah. So the pivotal images that you see of the Western Jesus today, normally the blonde-haired or like brunette-haired, blue-eyed man, is actually coming out from this time in Germany. You're seeing a lot more of those images being created. This has been true for any Christian state. The Jesus is painted in Italy, look a lot more Italian. The Jesus is painted in Greece, look a lot more Greek. So the renderings of him change from one culture to the next. And it's not an accident that this image accidentally looks kind of like Jesus. Albrecht Dürer is totally working it, and he's trying to appear like such. To the right here, you can see this incredibly dramatic scene. There's actually so much information here, it's kind of hard to take in. But he has a lot of images from dramatic scenes in the Bible. So I believe this might be the 4 horsemen? No, it's probably a different image. Yeah, it might be the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse riding in Tacoma down. If you watch any like Discovery Channel or History Channel documentaries that do anything biblical, they often pull this image out of the woodwork and show it off. So the best thing that Albrecht Dürer really did, and it's hard to see right here, I'll circle it, is he branded himself. This artist didn't only sign his works, he had a logo for the first time ever. And let me show you what it looks like. So it's hard to see right there. But his top letter, of course, is A for Albrecht. And it looks very architectural. Sorry, that was super messy. A. And then he has a line right here to finish the A. And fits the D inside. AD. So then, you know, everything in this time frame is still very obsessed and involved in religion. So Albrecht Dürer, he's playing with another biblical thing. What do you think of when you see those initials there for Albrecht Dürer, the A and the D? Maybe in terms of time. Yeah, Pacific, yeah. So AD stands for, we remember it as after death, but it actually means ante diem, which translates to the day of our Lord, which is when you listen to like old medieval, or watch old medieval movies, they say, the day of our Lord, or the year of our Lord, yeah, the year of our Lord. So he's still playing with that as well, isolating his most important initials, and there's definitely acknowledging the religious overlap. He knows his clientele. Okay, let me pull this link out for you guys. Gotta select it. I'm going to put it in the chat box right here. This is another just 3-minute video. Y'all could give it a watch and then write down anything, your response to the question on the board. Yeah. Uh-huh. It's amazing. Albrecht Dürer was also known for being able to paint with like a single hair. He was an incredibly controlled and detail-oriented person. Mm-hmm. That's a huge piece. Very cool. It's actually, Germany makes a huge deal whenever it comes out, too. All right, so the honest question for today, let me get my snipping tool out, is, as a social reaction, can artists control what happens to their work after they die? If y'all want to get your conversation started in the chat box, I pull up my snipping tool to take a photo. That would help too for people watching this video later to figure out where to start. You would say no? You think it depends? I gotta post that. I'll post that right after we're done with this. Oh, it completely disappeared? Ooh, no. Alright. I will look for it and make it happen again. At least the actual class is still open, right? That made me so happy when I saw the first people submitting it. Good. Yeah, the person, and if you're watching this video later, and this still exists, the person that I talked to about working with this class says there's still some kinks that are going to be slowly setting up or opening up, and I wonder if I have to do something like reopen the question form or something. It's no big deal if I have to, but yes. So moving on from the technology side, I wanted to show you guys a very different German artist. Actually, when I was a senior in high school, I was incredibly inspired by this artist's work. His work you can see at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. You can also see at our National Museum, and his work has been featured in a number of Holocaust museums around the world. Our artist here is Anselm Kiefer, and this is a work that's called Ascension. If you look closely at this piece, all the texture that you see in here is real. So there's no illusion at all. He is a textural artist. He paints with a lot of tar, actually. And he finds things and builds up areas on his boards and cuts them down and builds up again. It has lots of different layers of texture here. And when he says the word here, ascension, what do you think is happening in this piece? And it's supposed to be obscure for sure. Yes, right. And there's definitely an overlap here, that word here they're making. You can even see how that white, muddy-ish area are almost forming some wings. Yeah. It almost looks like an angel to you. So this is definitely how Anselm Kiefer works. He likes to make things that are obscured so that you can almost see it. I would think that the reason why it almost looks like an angel, he's got some clues here for you, is probably these wings, which aren't perfect either, right? They're going in wildly different directions. He even has like scratched in what looks like sort of a half circle in the background. Yeah. And then there's some motion going downwards. It's a very like muddy and dirty piece. And if you look up this artist's work, Anselm Kiefer et al., it all kind of looks like this. You're supposed to step back and kind of almost think about what if the things that we love and desire have been dragged through the mud. And that's very much in his vein. So, as I said, his work is featured in some Holocaust museums as well as major museums around the world and in our own country. Anselm Kiefer, as a child, was a Holocaust survivor. He made it to England, and basically for the rest of his life, he sort of looked at his own cultural heritage, his German culture, with judgment. And just thinking about the travesty and the pain that everyone had gone through during the Holocaust, and sort of re-examining everything in a different light. Showing these, he would take these beautiful rural scenes and almost look like they had dragged them through the mud. He's not a very positive person at all. And you can see from this quote right here, he believes his art serves a purpose. He says, art cannot help directly. Art is a way to make it obvious. Art is cynical. It shows the negativity of the world. It's the first condemnation. So by that, he's definitely talking about really the way art can help politically or culturally. So he's not claiming that his work will solve anything that happened post-Holocaust, but he is saying, that he can actually point it out. He can point to it. And that's the biggest thing that art can do. Do y'all agree with that at all? That's part of it. Do you think that art can actually serve a greater purpose than just pointing things out? Yeah. Do you think that his perception here is really shaped by his own experience? Probably. Yeah. I don't think any of us can speak for a person in his situation, but we can hear from his background and stuff how it might affect it. Yeah. And I think, I definitely agree that if you see any interviews or talk with any people who have ever gone through something like that before, they actually might find some solace in a piece like this. Maybe it somehow relates to their own experience that they've gone through. It's just interesting to see how it's the same country, similar cultures from the same area, and how wildly the art has had to change over time, from the Praying Hands by Albrecht Dürer to Ascension by Anselm Kiefer. Okay, so I have a little image of the artwork down on the right. So let's describe the style and process. And Elizabeth, why don't you take one side, and when Erin comes back, she'll take another. Hi, Erin. Welcome back. You can take the other category. Excuse me. So Elizabeth, when you get a chance, can you look into your plan for today and see if the honors discussion pops up there? It's there, okay. So I just updated the question from earlier to that discussion board. Cool. All right, Erin, we can help you out. So in terms of the style, remember styles are like an open word. Would you consider this to be simplistic or complicated? Oh, what? Weird. Okay. I'll just see what I can do to change that. You can't select it. That's super weird. Okay, let me make sure that the group is still the same. Maybe there's something that they changed with that when they uploaded you guys. Honors group. Yeah, it took away my honors members. That's what I gotta fix. Okay, that's an easy thing to fix. Yeah. I'm just thankful that y'all have access back to the class again, so I'm not gonna complain too much. Right, I'll fix that in a second. Okay, so we can say for some style words, we see, I might say simple, humble, maybe even muted. That will probably work pretty well. And then, let's see. So we'll do something a little bit easier. We'll compare and contrast. So this will be a free-for-all, right? The obvious things. The Albrecht Dürer side was Protestant, as most of Germany has been transforming over, and that was the bulk of the clientele. So you can imagine the early Protestants who were very against religious, I would say, the expensive religious imagery, actually loved this piece of praying hands because of how humble it was. Nice. Great job, guys. Yeah, I like compare and contrast. It's always, you can always do it. You don't have to know a whole bunch of background about a piece either. Always something, that's right. Okay, so this is the second to last slide here. How does this work affect the art world? In this case, if you've seen this image or images like this before, almost all of them have been inspired by this singular image. And that might help you with think about the impact that this image has had. I also kind of imagine the frustration that we have as artists, as sometimes what becomes the most famous thing that we've created is not what we think our best thing would be. Albrecht Dürer loved detailed, over-the-top compositions, but in the end, his most famous piece was really just from an original drawing, like a quick study. Yeah. The simple symbol he created, praying hands, has lasted well into today. Have you guys seen this piece before, and not from just from Albrecht Dürer? No, you haven't at all? Okay. Not really? My grandparents went to a church in Louisiana, like rural Louisiana, and I saw a print of this image there when I was 8 years old. And because it was always in the same place, which was also, it was like in that same area in which you could have donuts after church, so of course I remembered it really well. It was like right above the donut table, maybe to remind me why I was there. But it really laid into my memory, and I remember when I was y'all's age and I was learning about this piece, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've seen this. And then half the class said they had seen it in like a similar situation, like wood-paneled walls in a rickety frame in the back of somewhere. You have seen it? So it might trigger a memory, because it's it's so prominent that we don't notice it. So lastly here, how do you think this piece, this artwork, this knowledge might impact you? Maybe even in terms of your own symbolism and how you like to work. Yeah, there's all different kinds of statues created of this too, exactly. And that's the thing too, you can't copyright this image. You can't copyright praying hands, because anyone's hands can get into the position of a prayer. So there's thousands upon thousands of sort of recreation works from it. Yes, simple can be just as impactful as complex, and you don't have to draw a full person for sure. A lot of people like details. I have so many students, I think, just drawing eyes, because I think in reality, drawing an eye gives you the same satisfaction as drawing a face, because the eyes for most people are just so incredibly important. Okay. I'm going to turn off the recording button.